The stars were cold and silent that night. Queen Yuna flew through the darkness of space, her great wings spreading wide like silver sails. She was the last of the ancient star dragons, a creature so old that she had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. Her scales shimmered with colors that had no name in any human language. Her eyes burned like twin suns, golden and fierce and full of wisdom. Yuna was returning home from a long journey. She had visited the outer edges of her territory, checking the borders that kept her people safe. The dragon homeworld waited for her, a beautiful planet of mountains and fire and endless sky. Her eggs waited there too, 3 precious eggs that would soon hatch. She would be a mother again after 1,000 years. But something made her stop. Something pulled at her ancient heart like a small hand tugging at her scales. She turned her great head and looked into the darkness. There, floating among the stars, she saw the broken remains of a ship. It was a human vessel, one of those metal boxes that the small creatures used to travel between worlds. Yuna had seen many human ships before. She did not hate humans, but she did not love them either. They were like insects to her, living their short lives and dying before she could even learn their names. The ship was destroyed. Great holes had been torn through its metal skin. Fires still burned in some places, feeding on the last bits of air inside. Bodies floated in the emptiness of space, frozen and still. Yuna could see them through the broken windows. Men and women and children, all dead. She should have continued home. Her eggs needed her warmth. Her advisors would be angry if she was late. There was nothing she could do for these dead humans anyway. But still, something called to her. Yuna flew closer to the wreckage. Her great body moved through space like a fish through water, graceful and silent. She used her magic to create a bubble of air around herself, and she entered the broken ship through one of the large holes in its side. Inside, everything was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered red, making shadows dance on the walls. The ship had been attacked, that much was clear. Yuna could smell the weapons that had been used. She recognized the scent. It belonged to the Void Empire, a cruel civilization that conquered and destroyed without mercy. They had done this. They had killed all these people. Yuna walked through the corridors of the dead ship. Her claws clicked against the metal floor. She did not know why she was here or what she was looking for. She only knew that she could not leave. Not yet. She found them in a small room near the back of the ship. A woman lay on the floor, her body broken but her face peaceful. She had black hair and kind features, even in death. And there, sitting beside her, was a child, a human boy. He was small, maybe 7 years old by human counting. He had messy black hair and large dark eyes that looked up at Yuna without fear. He was holding his mother's hand, and he would not let go. His clothes were torn and dirty. There was blood on his face, but it was not his own. Yuna stared at the boy. The boy stared back at her. She had expected him to scream. Human children always screamed when they saw dragons. They cried and ran and called for their parents. But this boy did nothing. He just sat there, holding his dead mother's hand, looking at the massive creature that had entered his broken world. "You are alive," Yuna said. Her voice was deep and ancient, like thunder rolling across mountains. She spoke in the common language that all species understood. The boy nodded slowly. He still did not speak. "What is your name, little one?" Yuna asked. The boy was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, he said, "Tay." "Tay," Yuna repeated. The name felt strange on her tongue. "Where are the others, Tay? Where are your people?" Tay looked down at his mother. His small hand squeezed her cold fingers. "Gone," he said. "They are all gone." Yuna felt something shift inside her chest. She had lived for thousands of years. She had seen death countless times. She had lost friends and family and entire worlds. But something about this small boy, sitting alone in the darkness, refusing to let go of his mother's hand, touched a part of her heart that she had forgotten existed. "The ones who did this," Yuna said carefully. "Do you know who they were?" Tay nodded. "Bad people. They came in big ships. They wanted something. My mother hid me." His voice broke a little. "She told me to be brave." Yuna lowered her great head until her golden eye was level with the boy's face. She could see herself reflected in his dark eyes. She could see his fear, hidden deep beneath his courage. He was terrified. He was more scared than any creature she had ever seen. But he was not showing it. He was being brave, just like his mother had told him. "Your mother loved you very much," Yuna said softly. A single tear rolled down Tay's cheek. He wiped it away quickly as if ashamed. "I know," he said. Yuna made her decision in that moment. She did not think about it. She did not consider the consequences. She simply knew what she had to do, the same way she knew how to fly and how to breathe fire and how to move between the stars. "Come with me," she said. Tay looked up at her. His eyes were wide and uncertain. "Where?" "Home," Yuna said. "My home. You cannot stay here, little Tay. There is nothing left for you in this place." Tay looked down at his mother one last time. His small body shook with silent sobs. He bent down and kissed her cold forehead. Then slowly, he let go of her hand. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. Yuna could see that. Letting go of the last piece of his old life, the last connection to everything he had known. But he did it. He stood up on shaking legs and looked at the great dragon queen. "Okay," he said quietly. Yuna wrapped her magic around him like a warm blanket. She lifted him gently with her power and placed him on her back, between her massive wings. He was so small and light. He weighed nothing at all. "Hold on tight," she told him. "The journey is long." Tay grabbed onto her scales with his small hands. He did not ask any more questions. He did not cry or scream or beg to go back. He simply held on, trusting this strange creature who had found him in the darkness. As Yuna flew away from the destroyed ship, she did not look back. But Tay did. He watched until his mother's grave disappeared among the stars. Then he turned forward, facing the unknown future that waited for him. He did not know that he was about to enter a world that would hate him. He did not know that dragons would look at him with disgust and call him names. He did not know that the queen's own son would become his enemy. All he knew was that a dragon had found him in the darkest moment of his life, and she had chosen to save him. That was enough. For now, that was enough. The dragon homeworld was called Solara, and it was the most beautiful place Tay had ever seen. Mountains rose high into purple skies, their peaks covered with crystals that glowed like captured sunlight. Rivers of liquid gold flowed through valleys of green and silver. Dragons flew everywhere, their great bodies painting shadows across the land. But Tay saw none of this beauty when he arrived. All he could see were the eyes. Hundreds of dragon eyes, staring at him with confusion and anger and disgust. Queen Yuna landed in the great courtyard of her palace. The palace was carved from a single mountain, its walls covered with ancient symbols that told stories of dragon history. A crowd had gathered to welcome their queen home. But when they saw the small creature on her back, their welcoming cries turned to whispers of shock. "What is that thing? Is that a human? Why has she brought it here?" Yuna ignored the whispers. She lowered her body so that Tay could climb down from her back. The boy's legs were shaking, but he stood straight and did not hide. He looked at the dragons around him with the same quiet courage he had shown on the broken ship. "My queen!" A dragon pushed through the crowd. He was smaller than Yuna, but still enormous, with scales of deep red and eyes like burning coal. His name was Duri, and he was the chief advisor to the queen. "What is the meaning of this? Why have you brought a human child to Solara?" "I found him," Yuna said simply. "He was the only survivor of a Void Empire attack. He has no one and nowhere to go." Duri looked at Tay the way someone might look at a bug on their food. "Then we should send him to one of the human worlds. There are plenty of orphanages that would take him. He does not belong here." "I have decided that he will stay," Yuna said. Her voice was calm but firm, like stone wrapped in silk. The crowd erupted in shocked voices. Dragons roared their disapproval. Some laughed as if the queen had made a joke. Others growled with anger. Tay stood in the middle of it all, small and alone, saying nothing. Duri's eyes narrowed. "My queen, with great respect, this is not wise. You have eggs waiting to hatch. Your own children will be born soon. Do you truly mean to raise a human alongside them? Do you mean to give this creature the same place as your royal offspring?" Yuna looked at Tay. The boy met her gaze, and she saw something in him that the others could not see. She saw strength. She saw fire. She saw a spirit that refused to break even when everything around it had been destroyed. "Yes," she said, "that is exactly what I mean to do." The crowd fell silent. Even Duri had no words. No one had ever heard of such a thing. A human raised among dragons? A human given royal status? It was madness. It was impossible. It went against every tradition they had followed for thousands of years. But Yuna was the queen. Her word was law. She led Tay into the palace, leaving the stunned crowd behind. The corridors were wide and tall, built for creatures far larger than the small boy who walked beside the great queen. Tay had to take 5 steps for every one of Yuna's, but he did not complain. He did not ask to be carried. He just kept walking, his small feet pattering against the crystal floor. Yuna brought him to a room near her own chambers. It was a simple room by dragon standards, but to Tay it seemed like a whole world. The bed was huge, soft, and warm. Windows looked out over the golden valleys below. A fireplace crackled with gentle flames that gave off heat but no smoke. "This will be your home," Yuna said. "You will be safe here." Tay walked to the window and looked out at the strange new world. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, small and pale against the vast landscape behind him. "Why?" he asked quietly. It was the first real question he had asked since she found him. Yuna was silent for a moment. She thought about her eggs, waiting in the warm chamber below. She thought about her duty to her people. She thought about all the reasons she should have left this human boy among the stars. "Because when I looked at you," she said finally, "I saw something I have not seen in a very long time. I saw courage, true courage, not the kind that roars and fights, but the kind that sits quietly in the darkness, holding on to what it loves, refusing to give up." Tay turned to look at her. His dark eyes were wet with tears he was trying not to shed. "My mother was brave," he said. "She saved me. She hid me in a small space and told the bad people I was not there. They hurt her because she would not tell them where I was." His small hands clenched into fists. "I could hear everything, but I stayed quiet, like she told me to." Yuna felt her ancient heart crack a little. This small boy had listened to his mother die, and he had not made a sound. He had stayed hidden and quiet and brave, just like she asked. And then he had sat beside her body and held her hand, waiting for someone to find him. "Your mother would be proud of you," Yuna said softly. Tay wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Will the other dragons always hate me?" Yuna could not lie to him. He deserved the truth. "Some of them will. For a while. At least. You are different from them, and some creatures fear what is different. But I will protect you, Tay. No one will hurt you here, I promise. Tay nodded slowly. He did not smile, but some of the tension left his small shoulders. That night, Yuna's eggs began to hatch. She rushed to the hatching chamber, a warm cave deep beneath the palace. Tay followed, not because anyone told him to, but because he did not want to be alone. The chamber was filled with soft golden light and the smell of fire and new life. 3 eggs sat on beds of warm stones. 2 of them had already cracked open, revealing 2 small dragon babies with bright scales and curious eyes. They squeaked and chirped, looking for their mother. Yuna gathered them close with her great claws, her face full of a love that seemed to glow from within. The 3rd egg was larger than the others. It cracked slowly, and from inside emerged a dragon, unlike his siblings. His scales were darker, almost black, with hints of deep purple. His eyes were sharp and proud, even though he was only minutes old. He looked at his mother, then at his siblings, then at the small human boy standing in the corner. "This is Juan," Yuna said, lifting the dark-scaled baby with great care. "He is the eldest. He will be the next ruler of Solara." Juan looked at Tai. Even though he was just a baby dragon, there was something cold in his gaze, something that did not like what it saw. Tai looked back at him. He did not look away. He did not show fear. "Hello," Tai said quietly. "I am Tai." Juan turned his head away, pressing closer to his mother. He did not answer. Yuna noticed, but she said nothing. She hoped that time would heal all wounds. She hoped that her children would learn to accept this strange new brother. She hoped that she had made the right choice. But deep in her heart, she felt the first cold touch of worry. She had brought a human into a world of dragons. She had given him a place beside her own blood, and she had seen the look in her firstborn's eyes. This would not be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. She looked at Tay, still standing quietly in the corner, watching her family with those dark, brave eyes. She would protect him, no matter what it cost her. She would give him a chance to prove that he belonged here. She would show her people that courage and worth were not measured by the shape of your body or the color of your scales. She only hoped it would be enough. 10 years passed on Solara. The mountains remained tall, the rivers still flowed with gold, and the dragons still ruled the skies. But many things had changed. Tay was no longer a small boy. He had grown into a young man of 17, tall and lean with strong arms and quick eyes. His black hair was longer now, tied back from his face. His body was marked with scars from years of training and fighting, each one a story of survival. He stood at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the training grounds below. Young dragons practiced their flying and fire-breathing, their scales shining in the morning sun. Teachers called out instructions while students roared and swooped through the air. Tay watched them with a steady expression. He was not allowed to join them. He had never been allowed to join them. "Looking at something you will never have?" a voice said behind him. Tay did not need to turn around to know who it was. Juan's voice had become familiar over the years, usually speaking words meant to hurt. The dark-scaled prince had grown into a powerful dragon, larger than any of his siblings. His purple-black scales seemed to drink in the light, and his eyes still held that same coldness they had shown on the day he hatched. "I am just watching," Tay said quietly. He kept his voice flat, without emotion. He had learned long ago that showing pain only made Juan enjoy himself more. Juan landed beside him, his massive body making the ground shake. "Why do you stay here, human? Everyone knows you do not belong. The servants laugh at you. The nobles ignore you. Even the young dragons mock you behind your back." He leaned his great head close to Tay. "My mother may have taken pity on you, but you will never be one of us." Tay finally turned to face him. He had to look up to meet Juan's eyes, but he did not look away. "I stay, because this is my home," he said. "Your mother gave me a place here. I will not leave just because you wish I would." Juan growled, smoke rising from his nostrils. "You are not my brother. You are a pet. A toy that my mother keeps because she is too soft to throw it away." Tay felt the words cut into him, but he kept his face still. He had heard worse. He had survived worse. "Maybe I am," he said, "but I am still here. And I will still be here tomorrow and the day after that. Your words cannot change that." For a moment, something flickered in Juan's eyes. It might have been anger. It might have been something else. Then he spread his wings and flew away without another word, leaving Tay alone on the cliff. Tay watched him go. Then he turned and walked back toward the palace, taking the long way that wound through the gardens. He did not want to see anyone right now. He needed to be alone with his thoughts. The gardens of the palace were beautiful beyond description. Flowers that existed nowhere else in the universe bloomed in colors that had no names. Trees grew in spirals, their branches reaching toward the sky like hands. Small streams flowed between the paths, their water singing soft songs. Tay found his favorite spot, a bench hidden behind a wall of silver vines. He sat down and let out a long breath. His hands were shaking slightly. They always did after talking to Juan. He thought about his mother. He did this often, especially on hard days. He remembered her smile, her warm hands, the way she sang to him when he was scared. He remembered her last words to him, whispered through the door of his hiding place. "Be brave, my little Tay. Be brave and you will survive." He had been brave. He had survived. But sometimes he wondered if surviving was enough. "You are thinking too hard again." Tay looked up to see Queen Yuna standing at the entrance to his hidden spot. Even after 10 years, her beauty took his breath away. She had not changed at all. Dragons lived for thousands of years, and a decade was nothing to her. "How did you find me?" Tay asked. Yuna smiled, lowering her great body to lie beside the bench. "I always know where you are, little one. A mother knows these things." Tay felt warmth spread through his chest at the word mother. Yuna had never called herself that before. She had been careful not to, perhaps out of respect for his real mother's memory. But hearing it now, after the cruel words Juan had spoken, felt like a healing touch on a wound. "Juan says I am just a pet," Tay said quietly. "He says I will never belong here." Yuna was silent for a moment. "Juan is young and foolish. He speaks from fear, not truth." "Fear?" Tay looked at her with surprise. "What does he have to fear from me? He is a prince. He will be king. I am nothing." Yuna shook her great head. "You are wrong. You are not nothing, Tay. That is exactly what Juan fears." She looked at him with her golden eyes, full of ancient wisdom. "Do you know why the other dragons treat you badly? It is not because they hate you. It is because they are afraid of what you represent." "What do I represent?" "Change," Yuna said. "For thousands of years, dragons have believed that we are the greatest creatures in the universe. We are strong. We are magical. We live forever. We look at other species and see them as less than us." She paused. "But you, Tay, you challenge that belief just by existing." Tay frowned. "I do not understand." Yuna smiled. "You are human. By all our beliefs, you should be weak. You should have broken under the weight of living here. You should have run away or given up or fallen into despair. But you did none of those things. You stayed. You endured. You grew stronger." Her eyes softened. "Every day that you survive here, you prove that strength is not about power or magic or living forever. It is about something else, something that humans have in abundance." "What is that?" Tay asked. "The will to keep going," Yuna said. "No matter what. No matter how hard it gets, humans have such short lives, but you fill those lives with so much fire. You love fiercely. You hope desperately. You fight until your last breath. She touched his face gently with one great claw. That is what Juan fears. Not your body, not your strength. He fears your spirit. Tay felt tears rising in his eyes. He blinked them back. I am tired, he admitted. Sometimes I just want to give up. It would be so easy to leave, to find some human world and live a normal life. You could do that, Yuna agreed. No one would stop you. I would not stop you. She paused. But I do not think you will. Why not? Because you are your mother's son, Yuna said. And she did not raise a boy who runs away. Tay stared at her. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. It was small and tired, but it was real. Thank you, he said. Yuna stood up, her massive body rising like a mountain coming to life. Do not thank me, little one. Thank yourself. You are the one who chose to be strong. She began to walk away, then paused and looked back. There is a storm coming, Tay. I can feel it in my old bones. When it arrives, Solara will need all of its children, even the ones who came from the stars. She left him alone with her words. Tay sat on his bench and thought about what she had said. A storm was coming. He did not know what that meant, but he felt the truth of it in his heart. He stood up and walked back toward the palace. His back was straight, his eyes were clear. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to run away. He was going to stay and face whatever came. He was going to prove that he belonged here, not through dragon power or ancient magic, but through the simple, stubborn courage of a human heart. His mother had told him to be brave. He would honor her memory until his dying breath. The storm came 3 months later, and it came with fire and death. Tay was in the training yard when the warning bells began to ring. The sound echoed across the mountains, a deep, booming tone that he had never heard before. All around him, dragons stopped what they were doing and looked to the sky. What is happening? Tay asked a passing servant. The servant's face was pale with fear. The Void Empire, she said. They have found us. Tay felt his blood turn cold. The Void Empire. The ones who had destroyed his colony ship. The ones who had killed his mother and everyone he had ever known. They were here. They had come to Solara. He ran toward the palace, his heart pounding in his chest. Dragons flew overhead, their roars mixing with the sound of the bells. Soldiers rushed past him, pulling on armor and gripping weapons. The whole world had turned to chaos in the span of a heartbeat. He found Queen Yuna in the war room, surrounded by her generals. Her face was calm, but Tay could see the worry in her golden eyes. Maps covered the tables, showing the positions of enemy ships. Red markers filled the sky around Solara like drops of blood. How many? Duri was asking. 500 warships, one of the generals replied. Maybe more. They dropped out of hyperspace an hour ago. Our outer defenses are already falling. Yuna's claws dug into the stone table, leaving deep grooves. How did they find us? Our location has been secret for 10,000 years. No one had an answer. Tay stood in the doorway, listening to the fear in their voices. These were dragons, the most powerful creatures in the known galaxy. But even they could feel terror when facing the Void Empire. What are your orders, my queen? Duri asked. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, the worry was gone, replaced by cold determination. We fight, she said. We defend our home. Send every dragon who can fly to the front lines, activate the mountain shields, and prepare the young ones for evacuation. The young ones? Duri's eyes widened. You mean to send them away? If we fall, they must survive, Yuna said. They are the future of our people. Tay stepped forward. I want to fight. Every eye in the room turned to him. Some of the generals laughed. Others looked at him with pity. But Yuna just looked at him with those ancient golden eyes. "You are not a dragon," Duri said coldly. "What could you possibly do in a battle like this?" "I can pilot a ship," Tay said. "I spent the last 10 years studying human technology in the library. I know how the Void Empire fights. I know their weaknesses." He met Yuna's gaze. "Please, let me help. They took everything from me once. I will not let them do it again." Yuna was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Give him a ship," she said. "My queen," Duri protested. "This is madness." "I said give him a ship." Yuna's voice left no room for argument. "Tay has earned his place here. He deserves the chance to fight for his home." Tay bowed low. "Thank you." 1 hour later, he was flying through the sky in a small fighter craft. It was old and outdated, probably left behind by some human visitor decades ago. But Tay had fixed it up with his own hands over the years, never knowing why. Now he understood. He had been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. The battle was like nothing he had ever imagined. Dragons filled the sky like living missiles, their fire lighting up the darkness. Void Empire ships rained down death from above, their weapons cutting through everything they touched. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. The screams of the dying echoed across every communication channel. Tay flew his small ship through the chaos, dodging fire and debris. He was looking for something, anything, that he could do to help. He was just one human in a tiny ship. What difference could he make? Then he saw it. A group of Void Empire bombers was heading toward the palace. They were small and fast, designed to slip through defenses and strike at the heart of their enemies. The dragons were too busy fighting the warships to notice them. In minutes, they would reach the palace and destroy it, along with everyone inside, including the young dragons waiting for evacuation. Tay did not think. He just acted. He pushed his ship to maximum speed and flew straight at the bombers. They saw him coming and opened fire. Lasers streaked past his cockpit, so close he could feel the heat through the glass. But he did not stop. He could not stop. He fired his own weapons, old human guns that had been gathering dust for decades. The first bomber exploded in a ball of fire, then the second. The third turned to face him, but Tay was faster. He spun his ship and fired again, hitting the bomber's fuel tank. It detonated with enough force to shake his whole craft. But there were still 2 more bombers, and they were almost at the palace. Tay chased after them, pushing his ship harder than it was ever meant to go. Warning lights flashed all around him. The engine screamed in protest. He did not care. He could see the palace ahead, its crystal walls glowing in the firelight. He could see the young dragons being led to the evacuation ships. He could see Juan among them. Juan, the dragon who had hated him since the day they met, the one who called him a pet and wished he had never been born. He was down there, surrounded by young dragons who looked up to him, trying to lead them to safety, and he was directly in the path of the bombers. Tay made his choice. He flew his ship straight into the first bomber, aiming for its cockpit. The impact was violent and loud and painful. His ship crumpled around him. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. He felt bones break in his body, felt blood fill his mouth. But the bomber went down, crashing into the mountainside far from the palace. The last bomber turned to fire at him. Tay's ship was broken, spinning wildly through the sky. He had no weapons left, no engines, nothing but his own body and his own will. He saw Juan look up at him. He saw the shock in the Dragon Prince's eyes. He saw understanding dawn on that proud, cold face. The human who he had hated for so long was dying to save his life. Tay closed his eyes. He thought of his mother. He thought of Yuna. He thought of the little boy who had hidden in the darkness, holding on to hope with everything he had. He hoped he had made them proud. Then fire filled his vision, but it was not the fire of the enemy. It was dragon fire, bright and golden and beautiful. Queen Yuna herself came roaring out of the sky, her great jaws opening wide. She caught the final bomber in her teeth and crushed it like paper. Then she dove after Tay's falling ship, catching it in her claws before it could hit the ground. Tay opened his eyes to see her golden face above him. "I told you," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I told you that you belonged here." Then everything went dark, and Tay knew nothing more. He woke up 3 days later in a soft bed, his body wrapped in bandages. Every part of him hurt, but he was alive, and sitting beside his bed, watching him with those dark purple eyes, was Juan. The Dragon Prince said nothing for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered his great head. "Thank you," he whispered. "Brother." It was the first kind word he had ever spoken to Tay. It would not be the last. The war lasted for 6 more months after that first terrible day. The Void Empire threw everything they had at Solara, determined to crush the dragons who had defied them for so long. But something had changed in that first battle, something that the enemy had not expected. The dragons had found their fire again, and at the center of that fire stood a human boy. Tay recovered slowly from his injuries. His body had been broken in more places than the healers could count. They said it was a miracle he survived at all. Humans were fragile creatures, they reminded him, not built for war like dragons were. But Tay just smiled and got back to work. He could not fly anymore. His ship had been destroyed, and his body would never be strong enough to pilot another one. But he had something more valuable than speed or strength. He had knowledge. He had spent 10 years studying the Void Empire from the dusty books in the palace library. He knew how they thought. He knew how they fought. He knew their weaknesses. He became an advisor to the War Council. At first, the generals laughed at him. A human telling dragons how to fight? It was ridiculous. But Queen Yuna made them listen. And slowly, as Tay's suggestions led to victory after victory, the laughter stopped. He taught them how to break the Void Empire's communication systems. He showed them where the weak points in their ships were hidden. He explained how the enemy commanders thought and how to trick them into making mistakes. Each piece of information came from years of quiet study, years of preparing for a moment he never knew would come. But the most important thing Ty did was not about strategy or tactics. It was about something much simpler. He reminded the dragons how to hope. Before Tay came to Solara, the dragons had grown tired. They had lived for so long that nothing excited them anymore. They had become comfortable in their power, lazy in their pride. When the Void Empire attacked, many of them wanted to surrender. They saw no point in fighting a war they might lose. But Ty showed them something different. He showed them what it meant to fight even when victory seemed impossible. He showed them what it meant to get up after being knocked down, again and again, refusing to stay on the ground. He showed them the fierce, burning spirit that lived inside humans, the spirit that made them dangerous despite their small size and short lives. The dragons watched him and remembered what they had forgotten. They remembered that life was precious because it ended. They remembered that courage was beautiful because it cost something. They remembered that hope was not a weakness but the greatest strength of all. One by one, the tired old dragons found their fire again. They flew into battle with renewed purpose. They fought not just to survive but to protect something they believed in. They became the warriors they had been in ancient times, before comfort had made them soft, and at the head of them all flew Prince Juan. The dark-scaled dragon had changed more than anyone since the day Tay saved his life. The cold pride that had defined him for so long had melted away, replaced by something warmer and stronger. He sought out Tay's advice before every battle. He defended him in war councils when other dragons questioned his judgment. He called him brother in front of everyone, daring anyone to challenge the word. The bond between them grew deep and true. They were different in every way that could be measured: a dragon and a human, a prince and an orphan, fire and earth. But beneath those differences, they were the same. They were both warriors. They were both sons of Queen Yuna. They were both willing to give everything to protect their home. The final battle came on a morning that burned red and gold. The Void Empire had gathered its remaining forces for one last attack. 500 ships had become 1,000. Their commanders had sworn to destroy Solara or die trying. Tay stood in the war room looking at the maps that showed the approaching fleet. The numbers were overwhelming. Even with all their courage, even with all their fire, the dragons were outnumbered and outgunned. "We cannot win this," Duri said quietly. The old advisor had learned to respect Tai over the months of war, and his voice held no mockery now, only fear. "There are too many of them." Tay looked at Queen Yuna. She was tired. The war had aged her in ways that surprised everyone. Her golden scales had lost some of their shine. Her eyes were heavy with grief for all the dragons she had lost. But she stood tall, refusing to show weakness in front of her people. "What do you think, Tay?" she asked. Tay was quiet for a moment. Then he stepped forward and pointed at the map. "Here," he said, touching a spot in the center of the enemy formation. "Their command ship is here. It controls all the others. If we destroy it, their fleet will fall apart." "That is in the middle of 1,000 warships," a general protested. "No one could reach it and survive." "I can," Juan said. Everyone turned to look at him. The Dragon Prince stood at the back of the room, his dark scales gleaming in the firelight. His eyes were fixed on Tai, full of trust and determination. "I am the fastest dragon in Solara," Juan continued. "If Tai guides me, if he tells me exactly where to go and what to do, I can reach the command ship. I can destroy it." "You will die," Yuna said softly. Juan looked at his mother. "Maybe," he said, "but if I do not try, everyone will die. You taught me that, Mother. When you saved Tai all those years ago, you taught me that some things are worth risking everything for." Yuna's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Tai, then at Juan, the two sons she had chosen in different ways. "Go," she whispered, "both of you, and come back to me." The battle that followed would become legend. Stories would be told of it for thousands of years, sung by dragons and humans alike. They would tell of Prince Juan, the dark-scaled dragon who flew through a storm of fire and death. They would tell of Tai, the human boy who spoke in his ear through a tiny radio, guiding him past dangers that no eye could see. They would tell of how Juan reached the command ship against all odds. They would tell of how he unleashed his fire, not just the fire of his body, but the fire of his spirit, the fire that Tai had helped him find. The command ship exploded in a blast of light that could be seen from the surface of Solara. And they would tell of how the Void Empire fleet fell apart after that, ships crashing into each other, commanders screaming orders that no one followed. They would tell of how the dragons chased the survivors into the darkness of space, roaring victory cries that echoed among the stars. Juan survived. Barely. His body was burned and broken, his wings torn to shreds. But he survived. And when he landed on Solara, surrounded by cheering crowds, the first person he looked for was Tay. The human stood at the edge of the crowd, leaning on a walking stick that he had needed since his first battle. He was smiling, tears running down his face. Juan limped toward him and lowered his great head until they were eye to eye. "We did it," he said. "Brother." Tay reached out and touched Juan's burned scales. "We did it together." Queen Yuna found them like that, standing side by side in the morning light. Her two sons, born of different worlds, united by something stronger than blood. She thought about the day she had found Tay on that broken ship, a small boy holding his dead mother's hand. She thought about all the dragons who had told her she was wrong to bring him home. She thought about the years of struggle and pain and doubt. She had not chosen Tay over her own offspring. She understood that now. She had chosen him for them. She had given them a brother who would teach them what it meant to be truly brave. She had given them a light to follow through the darkest night. The Void Empire never attacked Solara again. The dragons rebuilt their world, stronger and wiser than before. And at the heart of their kingdom, standing beside the throne, was a human who had proven that courage had no shape, no size, no species. Tay lived for many more years, growing old while the dragons around him stayed young. When he finally died, at the age of 93, all of Solara mourned. Juan carried his body to the highest mountain and turned it to ash with his own fire, sending his brother's spirit to join the stars. And on that mountain, they built a statue, not of a dragon, but of a human boy, small and alone, holding his mother's hand. Beneath it, they carved words in the ancient dragon language, words that would last forever. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is holding on when everything tells you to let go. The statue still stands today, looking out over the golden valleys of Solara, and every young dragon, before they take their first flight, is brought to see it. They are told the story of the human boy who became a prince, the orphan who became a hero, the outsider who became the heart of a kingdom. They are told the story of Tai, and they remember.